Hello.
Hello.
How are you? How are you?
Hey man, I'm great. I'm blessed. Can't complain.
All right. Well, welcome to another edition of The Couch Attorney. And today we have a guest. I'm gonna just leave it anonymous. How about that? I'll just call you my friend.
That's fine. That's fine.
All right, great. Well, today I want to talk to you. First give a little background of who you are and what your experience is, and then we'll get into it.
Well, I am 50 years of age and originally from Detroit, Michigan. I worked with Detroit Police Department for over 22 years, and I worked for the Wayne County Sheriff Department for 3 years. And I moved out here to Arizona and back in 2012, and I've been here ever since. And I worked various positions out here from Child Protective Services, investigations, and worked for the Casa Grande Police Department. And I went back to CPS and worked as a special investigator, overseeing cases of horrific abuse against children and different things like that. So,
Wow.
got a little experience here and there.
Yeah, it looks like you got a lot of experience here and there.
all of it's relatively around being a servant, social services kind of deal. And I'm a father, raised one son and have several godsons that I have. So I have a degree in psychology and finishing my degree in theology. So yeah, pretty much.
All right, wonderful. Well, given your extensive history in law enforcement, I wanted to talk to you today, obviously, about what's going on in the country, and also to get your input on some solutions that we might come to and how we can change the situation. But I first want to talk to you about what your experiences have been with officers when it comes to this problem that we have of biases and racial insensitivities and physical abuse. So can you give us, you were telling me before about some conversations or that have gotten heated at meetings. Can you share about that?
Yes, in my tenure as a police officer, I'm just going to speak on the one department. I've had many situations stemming around race within the department. There is a lot of good officers. Let me just put that out there. There are some great officers out there, some officers of all colors, black, white, Hispanic, Asian, that are some wonderful cops that really out there to do their job and to serve and protect, which is what we're supposed to do. But there is a few officers that come to these urban cities specifically just so they could get into create racial tension between themselves and the black citizens that they patrol the city they're in. And me and my partners have gotten into multiple arguments with them. We even branded cars as KKK car, and we would confront them and roll call, make jokes about them. Not, and it wasn't jokes as in ha, it was jokes and oh yeah. So we just calling them out. But also y'all gonna go out there and kick some niggas' ass today, huh? That's what y'all agenda is. And
what would they say to that?
Well, some of I'm a big guy, so pretty known for being tough. So you had some tough guys to try to get up and say, hey, why don't you, man, shut your mouth or blah blah blah. And then there's one particular time we got in each other's face, and the black officer got on my side, and the white officer, a few white officers on his side got on his side, and it was a standoff between black and white. And I must admit there was some white guys on my side as well. No
Wow.
blacks was on their
This is
side.
in roll call?
Hmm?
This is in the meeting? This is
This
in
is
roll
roll
call?
call. This is roll call. Yeah, this is roll call. And from that situation, like I was telling you, my sergeant noticed that I was taking a stand against it, and he began to put some of those officers, break them up and put them in the car with me, and without my consent. That kind of pissed me off because they kind of mess up your night when you got to deal with your partner and the tension in the air. But he later explained to me that he did that because he wanted me to teach him. He wanted me to confront him.
And for clarity, you're talking about the officers from the KKK car.
Right.
He would split them up and have them ride with you.
Right. He would split them up.
Okay.
Exactly. He would split up the officers from the KKK car, or the officers he thought that was had that kind of mentality, and he would put them in the car with me, so that I could correct their behavior and confront them on it and call them out on it.
And what was that like when that started?
Well, I just took charge. Thank good God I was the senior officer. So
How?
How
did you take charge?
Well, I said thank God I was the senior officer. So when you're the senior officer, you're like the sergeant in the car, and so I was able to take the keys from them and drive. And I was able to when we did stop people, I was able to take the lead on that, and how the flow of the conversation, how decisions we were going to make regarding each person we stopped or investigated, different things like that. And so what I did particularly is I talked to them. I talked to people, talked to citizens. We had to make an arrest. We made an arrest. And it was 9 times out of 10, I learned that if you have good communication skills, we call it verbal judo. You can diffuse any type of tense situation. Now, there's going to be some situation where you can't, and you're going to have to handle your business. And sometimes, and my philosophy is you level the playing field with the same amount of force that is used against you. And when it's over, it's over. You don't let your emotion get ahead of you and continue to beat someone once you got them subdued. And what I mean by subdued is handcuffs.
Okay. So have you had any incidents where you've seen white officers going overboard on a suspect and you had to intervene?
Oh man, yes. Unfortunately, you come across that a lot, because when you get into a situation and you need help, when you call on that radio, we all have to respond. We all have to back each other up. And that moment, there is no color. It's just blue.
Okay.
But I have arrived on calls where they, this particular time I saw the white officer had this black guy down, kind of like the George Floyd situation, and they had him handcuffed and they were beating the crap out of him. And I guess he had got the best of them earlier, and their feelings got hurt. And so they commenced to stomp him and things like that. So me and my partner jumped out the car. We jumped in the middle of it, pushed everybody out the way, picked up the suspect, and I was screaming, "It's over. Where did he go? We're going to convey him to the precinct and meet you there. Whoever the arresting officer, meet you there so you can process this inmate and do the paperwork." And this particular time, when I did that, I confronted that person at off-duty roll call, and it was pretty intense.
Wow. Okay. And so when you see situations like that, is it something that goes beyond just you and the officer having it out? Is it anything that's paperwork involved or anything like that? Any consequences to that?
Well, no. And let me explain why. There's a certain thing called the blue curtain. and you try as it's internal. I really can't get into the dynamics of what that means, but I can explain to you so you can get somewhat of an idea.
Okay.
And it's not foreign. I think most fraternities have this. I'm
Is
a
this the
former.
same as the blue code?
Yes, blue code, blue curtain. Yes, and fraternities, any group, pretty much have these different code of honor. I'm a former Marine, so we had it in there. We have it in the Marine Corps. And what the blue code is you look out for your brother. And so if you can handle the situation internally, you do that. You
Okay.
try your best not to take that person to the supervisors, um, you know, because it could cause irreparable damage to their career. And sometimes that's necessary, but a lot of times it's not. And so we try to know what that line is. We try not to cross. We try not to cross that line. If we have to, I am of the persuasion that I'm going to do what I need to do to sleep at night, and to make sure that I can look my children, my family in the face and said I did the right thing. And so the line, the code, the blue code means something different to me than it means to someone else.
Okay. And did you have any incidents where you had to come close to that line of turning somebody in, or?
Well, yes, I had a situation where an officer, uh, we made an arrest, and this person had a gun on him, and we were arresting him for the CCW ordinance, and he had a very antique knife. This person was Native American. He had a very antique knife on him. And so when we arrested him for the gun, we confiscated all the property, wallet, money, knife, everything that went along with him. So I had collected over 6 different items, and we put evidence tags on these items and put them into the property storage unit, so that if it's used for evidence purposes, or that person may get out and they get all their property back. Well, I believe it was 6 items, and I brung 6 evidence tags, but there was only 5 items on the table. And I knew what was going on right then and there. And I said, "Well, where's the 6th item, which was the knife?" And he said, "Well, no, I'm going to keep this." And I said, "No, you're gonna turn that in."
Wow.
And he said, "No, I'm going to keep it." And I slapped my handcuffs on the table. He said, "What's that for?" I said, "These can go on your wrist." He said, "What do you
Wow.
mean?" I said, "Well, once you break the law, you are no longer the badge no longer protects you. And so you are breaking the law right now. And so you're no longer a cop at this moment. So if you refuse, I'm going to ask you one more time to put that on the table. If you're not, I'm going to place you under arrest." And that item showed up and went on the table. So
Wow.
there was, I still managed to handle that internally. I didn't.
Was he bitter with you over that, or
Oh, at the
what was
moment,
his end result?
At the moment, I'm sure. Yeah, at the moment, he was very bitter with me. But I set a standard for myself, which I didn't care. I didn't give a damn. I have a strong personality, so I don't give a damn if you mad at me or not. I, as a rookie, went through a training day experience, and that taught me how to be strong. But anyway,
You mean like a Denzel Washington training
oh
day
yeah,
experience?
when I was a rookie, I went through. I mean, when I saw that movie, it reminded me of my rookie experiences, and so
Wow.
I was taught to be strong and make.
Were they testing you? Were they testing you,
No,
or
my
was it?
partner was just a crook. He was Denzel Washington. And I was the white guy. Only I was black.
Okay.
And he was just the crooks of the crooks, and he was just a bad dude. And there was nothing good about this guy. He was every bit of Denzel Washington, a drug dealer / pimp / everything. But so I'm said that to say that I became very strong very early, and so when I came across this officer, and he was pretty pissed at me, but I didn't give it down. I stood flat-footed, And I said what I said. And, I'm sure now if I could see that officer, he would probably thank me because now he's a high-ranking official.
Wow. The same one that tried to pocket the knife.
Exactly.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Yeah.
So with officers in a position where you're seeing something going on and you want to intervene, but then you got the blue code, what would be your advice at how they can adhere to both? Do the right thing, but yet still adhere to the blue code.
Well, as I read more about the George Floyd case, I read something that said that one of the officers, I think it was the black officer, had only been on the job for a few months. And his thing was...
And that's going to be his defense.
That's going to be his defense. And it's a good one. Because you are trained to follow the direction of your seniority officer, like I explained. And so what I offer to officers, even rookie officers like that young man that got caught in that circumstance, I have no doubt to believe that he probably did not want to see that happen. And he probably did try to intervene to the best of his ability at the time. But what I would say to him is, right from wrong. You know when someone's dying. You have to have courage. You have to have that courage enough to intervene. I mean, you could have. I saw a video where an officer, they were arresting someone, wanted to riot, and he had his knee in his neck, and the officer moved it. You have to take his...
Yeah, I did see that. I saw that.
That was being very proactive, and that officer was staying within that code that we talked about. He removed his knee quickly off of him, and he kept doing his job. Sometimes you can handle like that, and then sometimes you have to come out and you have to say, hey, Sergeant, this person is rogue. This person needs to be removed. And there's instances where I've done that too. I haven't always stayed with behind the curtain or the code. Sometimes I came out, but you know what? There's enough good officers out there that would not condemn you for that. There's enough good officers to say you made the right choice. You made the right decision. And my philosophy is this: if it's going to damage my career, cause hurt to my family, cause me to be arrested, there is no code. There's my code. And that code it may not be the same as the blue code. And I'm going to do what I have to do to protect me and my family and our livelihood and our and what I bring home, because it's a job and you are getting a paycheck. And I'm sure your family is relying on that.
Things have gotten complicated for the officers now, with you seeing that, like in this case, where an officer was charged with aiding and abetting. So now, if officers are being charged for, not actually having the knee on the neck, but being there and not doing anything, how is that going to mix with the blue code? Because not all officers have thought it through as well as you have, and not all officers have the tenure to try and start pushing the blue code. So how do you think that's going to play?
Well, the blue code is nothing official. It's just a level of respect that we give one to another. And because you got to keep in mind, the job, it challenges every aspect of your mentality and your personality, who you are, your fears. It challenges every aspect of you. And so you have to keep in mind that all officers that do bad things or that seemingly do bad things are not bad people. And so they just responded out of their makeup, their psychological makeup, the fight or flight. And so it takes a senior officer, a seasoned officer, to help balance that out, to help. Remember there. I remember there was a part in a train on a what's it called? What's that movie called? No. But there was a scene in this movie, and I think of it. I think it was Colors. Yeah, Colors, where the officer said to his senior
Okay.
officer, he said, "I want to run down there. I want to run down the house." And his partner said, "Why run? Walk down and fuck them all." And so that was
Right.
that senior officer bringing balance to the officer. Say, "Hey, listen, calm down." In other words, calm down and think. So
Okay.
what has to happen is you have to have a balance between senior officers, seasoned senior officers, and rookie officers. And I hated working with my senior officer. I mean, because they were boring. They give you all these stories every day, but I didn't realize when I became
Mm.
older that those stories came back and helped me, and it shaped me to be the cop that I was when I was out there. So it's going to take that.
Wow. You know, I think the big mandate that should and could come out of this is better training for officers. And I seen a sign that one of the protesters had that said, it read, 860 hours of training for police academy and 1,500 hours for barber school. Is that correct?
It varies in different states and varies in different cities. But I would say yes in many cases.
And tell me this. So let's say we made you in charge right now, because you obviously have the experience and you also have the mental makeup, the moral makeup to do the right thing. So let's say we made you in charge of the training and how we're going to revamp this thing. What would you do?
Let me say this before I get into that. The dynamics of policing has changed so much to the point where I wouldn't even want that job. I'm gonna tell you right now.
Wow. Okay.
Because the officers now, and this is unheard of, they could now come together and do a no fake. The officer could come.
Wait. They can come together and do a what?
And say they have no faith in their leader. They can now come together and come and do a vote and say they have no faith in their leadership, and they can vote you right on out. And so I think the Phoenix chief is dealing with that right now, where they're trying to do her the same way they did the last chief. They voted that last chief out, and they're trying to do her the same way. So it's very inherently harder for them to try to do the right thing, because if the majority is corrupted, has a corrupt mentality, and you're trying to do the right thing as the chief, they can say, well, you're not,
you're going to get voted out,
and say you're not, and vote you right on out. You can be voted out. And so
so do you think that's a good thing? Does it have any advantages to that? Okay.
Well, let me say, I think I understand why that was implemented, and because you had a lot of bad leadership in, and you couldn't get rid of them. You know, kind of like we have in the president's office. Get rid of them.
It makes it political.
Yes, it does. I agree with that. It does make it political. And so there's there's no real way this, because it doesn't work. I mean, now they can vote you out. If they're bad, they can vote out a good chief. If the chief is bad, they can, so it's no real way of trying to handle that. There's no real solution to that. But to go back to your question, what I would do is I would try to bring back senior officers, the ones that retired. And I would have some kind of a mentoring program, implement some kind of mentoring program where they could have these conversations with these rookie officers to try to get them to understand that these are citizens out here. These citizens are looking for your help. Yes, a lot of them are bad, and there's a lot more that are good, and you need to bring a balance to that. And so you need to know how to shift your wear different hats for different people. Sometimes you have to be the preacher. Sometimes you have to be the social worker. Sometimes you have to be the counselor. Sometimes you have to be a person who brings food. Sometimes you have to be the enforcer, and sometimes you have to be judgment. And so you wear many hats, and they need to understand that policing is not one way. It's not one way. You don't all. It's not always enforced. Sometimes you have to wear a different hat, and they need to know when to do that.
So would you also change the requirements to become an officer, like educational requirements?
I don't think education has much to do with it. You can have a master's degree, a doctorate, but if you have racist mentality in your
Right.
heart, that's not going to education not going to change anything. And so I think what I would try to get the investigators to do when they're looking for candidates is go talk to their family. I know when I was coming on the job, they canvassed my whole neighborhood,
Wow.
1 block, 2 blocks over, just to get an
Wow.
idea of who I was, my character.
Okay.
I don't think they're doing that anymore. And so they need to go back. They need to go to the schools and say, "Hey, how's he?" They talk to my enemies as well as
Wow.
my friends. And there was one common thread.
Okay.
Yeah, he a good guy. We don't like him, but he a good guy
Okay.
though.
Is it
And that's all they
possible
need
to
to hear.
change the dynamic where you have white officers who don't live in the communities that they serve and therefore don't really have a real connection to that community or a real desire to serve that community? Is there something we can change about that? Maybe making it a requirement to be somewhere in the vicinity? Is there any way of changing that? And is there really a lack of black candidates?
Well, I think that will probably be a problem with the equal opportunity um, um, mandate that's put out there. I don't think you can implement that. But what you can do is, yes, we do need a lot more African American or brown officers on the job. And so I think that in order to do that, you need to get them at an
Yes,
early age, kind of like
ROTC.
they do when you go in the military. They're Yeah, ROTC. They have there's already a police cadet program, and I think those people should probably be the first people you hire. Those people, the ROTC, not the ROTC, but the police explorer programs that have an interest in being a police officer from an early age, and have a police officer recruiter, kind of like they do in the military. They follow you through your whole high school time, and that person would kind of mentor you up until you're of the age to actually become a police officer. So you'll have a lot of understanding and a lot of mentorship from a senior officer prior to coming on the job. That's kind of what I did to one of my young men that I just got on the job. I've been mentoring him for years. And so he tells me now, he said, people tell me, he said, man, you only been on the job a few years, but you have a really good understanding, really good level mindedness about police work. And he contributed that to me. He said, well, I
Okay.
had somebody to mentor me and teach me
So
prior to me coming on the job. And so I am still in communication with that officer today. That officer called me whatever situation he has. Hey, this is what do you think I
okay.
should do? How do you think I handle that? And I'm still mentoring him today. And I think that's the program. That probably would be the best program, or best way to try to make sure these officers have the right mindset
Okay. Let me
throughout their
ask you
whole
this.
career.
I know that internal affairs is part of the problem because when you have situations where officer involved shooting, the body cameras go to internal affairs, and all of a sudden we can't see the body camera for a year until things have calmed down, and it puts a whole different spin on the case. And there's a lot of obstruction with internal affairs, is why it usually takes like 9 months to even charge an officer. What do you think about that, and what changes do you think we could make there to make this a more equitable situation when it comes to criminal cases against officers?
Well, I have I don't have any information about internal affairs
Is there any
that
changes you could think of off the back, like maybe with
taking.
the body? Is there anything we can do with the body cam situation to make sure that we get that in a timely fashion?
Well, as an officer, if I'm thinking like an officer, there is a certain amount of time an investigator needs to do their case, and they can't do that when the public is, intervening with their comments and their own ideas and different things like that. So I think the officers do need a certain level of time to review all the evidence, to put a firm case together, to
Okay,
come up with whatever
fair enough.
to come up with charges. But if there is obstruction being done in there, I mean, I'm sure it's going to be done. It is being done. I have no information on that, but I'm sure it is being done. And if it is being done, only thing I can say is that they report back to a superior officer, and hopefully that superior
Okay,
officer is a good person who can say, "Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why is this case? Why is
okay,
this film not being released?" I had an opportunity to be a public information officer, so I understood that there's a certain out, and so I was a
okay,
liaison between the media and the police department. And so I did put pressure on some of the investigations. Say, okay, let me in on your case, and they had to tell me what the case was, even though I couldn't tell it to a civilian. And I would tell them, okay, then it's time to release
right,
that because you're not doing anything else with it. And so each department is different. They may not have that level of, and I worked straight for the mayor and the chief, and so I had a lot of
okay.
power, if you
So,
will, to make
so
those
let me ask you this.
decisions. So
We've been talking
I don't
about the
know.
officers. Let's talk about the civilians now. What advice would you give to civilians? Let's say I'm being pulled over by that KKK car. What advice would you give to me?
The advice I give to you is the same advice I train my sons. I trained them how to be pulled over. And what officers need to do is they need to create a hostile environment between you and them to substantiate
Right.
their reason to be aggressive. You don't give them that. Do not give them that. You have to keep a calm head and a calm mind, and use the disciplines that my parents taught me. Yes, sir. No, sir. And it's not demeaning. I know a lot of young people think, oh, well, I'm not giving them a sir. I'm not calling them sir. Well, you know what?
Right.
You need to do that. You need to do that. Yes, sir. No, sir. Turn on the lights. Put your hands at 10 and 12. Illuminate the whole light with your overhead. Lower all the windows down in the car, and just sit there until they ask you for your credentials. Hopefully all your stuff is in a row. Now, if you know you got a warrant and you're driving without a license, you're going to be that stop is
Okay.
it's going to escalate. It's going to escalate. You're going to probably pull you out of the car. They are probably going to search you. They are going to do all of this stuff. So my advice to those people that are driving illegal,
Okay.
don't do it. And if you are legal, you if that officer don't make any erratic movement, don't reach down quickly, don't do that. Make all your moves slow, methodical, and tell them what you're doing. When I get pulled over, even today, I turn on all my lights. My hands are 10 to 12. I roll down all my windows in the car, and I say, good afternoon or good evening, officer. How can I help you? Well, I caught you at going such and such. Okay, sir. My apologies. I was just trying to get home. Okay, can I see your license registration proof of insurance? Sir, I'm going to reach into my glove compartment where my wallet is and pull out my license. I have a firearm in that car, in the glove compartment. Okay, I thank you for letting me know that. Do it very slowly. You reach in there, grab it out very slowly,
Okay.
pull it out, give him your ID. Okay. So even if they have the mind to try to create a hostile environment, if you don't feed into it, how can they do that? They're not going to go from 0 to 100 if you're being calm as a cucumber. If you're being calm, if you're being respectful, because remember that camera is watching you. It's there to protect you. So use it to your advantage. And so if that officer just get aggressive with you, he's going to have to explain that. And how can you explain that? How can you? The cameras don't lie.
But how
can you explain that? And even if it went to an investigative branch, they wouldn't even be able to explain it.
But tell me this. Let's say he went north on me and I filed a report. Does anything happen with those reports? I mean, because you when you hear these officers that are getting caught, like the one with the knee on the neck, he had several different instances throughout his career. So does anything happen to him? Is it worth it?
It's different in different agencies, my brother. I mean, I can say in the police department I came from, sometimes it did, sometimes it don't. It depends on the supervisor. It depends on the department. And sometimes you know, listen, you cannot control people. There's going to be good people and bad people in any type of industry, any type of organization that you find. And the police department is no different. And so if you have a bad supervisor who is with the bad officers, yes, there may be an attempt to cover that up. Okay, and if you have a good supervisor, then you're going to be fried. It just depends on the department. It depends on the officer. It depends on
if I get a bad officer that's giving me problems, do I have the right to request a supervisor come to the scene?
Yes, you can. That's another thing you could do. You can ask for a sergeant to come to the scene, and they, by law, supposedly have to do that. But you have to comply with their orders first. You cannot refuse their orders and ask for a supervisor. You have to comply.
That's the key part.
And then ask for a supervisor. Absolutely. So because refusing an officer on a lawful stop is a misdemeanor. It's a misdemeanor. It's refusing the lawful order of a police officer, which makes it a misdemeanor. Now he has an arrestable offense against you. So now you can't arm that police officer with that. You comply with their instructions, and then you say, "Sir, can I have a supervisor to come to the scene, please?"
Great. Okay. Sir, well, in the last minutes we got, I want to touch a little bit about on that George Floyd case and those officers at the scene. First of all, can you see a scenario where at least two of those officers walk, and why? Do you see a scenario where any of those officers could be found not guilty and walk?
Well, I can for the officers that is the rookie. I can see that person getting maybe not be a police officer, because cowardice is you could be terminated if you found to be cowardice. And so the police, he may not get no charge, but he may not be able to come.
Well, he's charged with second degree felony murder, aiding and abetting. So
I don't think that that's going to be able to stick on that person. If that person's defense was, I was a rookie following the instructions of my senior officer, and I did tell him several times to stop. If they can prove that, then that charge has to go away. It can't be.
Well,
It doesn't fit the elements
let's
of murder.
say, but see, the charges in murder is assault that led to murder. So, for my legal thoughts, I would think that once he's screaming out, I can't breathe, and you have other people on the street that's telling you he can't breathe. My thought is, if can you prove that the officers that were down holding his legs and everything, did they hear that? Can I prove that they heard him screaming, I can't breathe, and the other people around them telling them? Because then you must know that this is an assault. And then if you didn't stop an assault, isn't that aiding and abetting assault regardless of your tenure and instruction?
Well, you know what? I'm going to play the devil's advocate here because, I have a lot of lawyer friends and I've been argued a lot of cases. And I know I pretty much have a good idea of where the lawyer's going to go with that. You cannot scream out, you can't breathe. You cannot scream out, you can't breathe if you really can't breathe. Okay? That's just the fact.
Okay.
It's kind of like the choking. When you have somebody who's choking, they won't say, hey, I'm choking, because they're choking, something clogging their obstructing their vocal cords, so they can't scream that out. So the argument is, if you're saying I can't breathe, you are breathing.
But what
So
if the
that's
end
going to be an
result
argument.
is you died from
So,
asphyxiation? So you really couldn't breathe.
well, here's what happened. I believe that at the point, at the time he was saying he can't breathe, he was breathing, but I believe it did. But the longer that the officer kept his knee on him, he eventually couldn't breathe. Okay, eventually it went to he couldn't breathe. So it did actually go into the fact that he couldn't breathe. Now, what those other officers on the side knew about, what they understood, don't turn it on. Oh, what they didn't know, if they wasn't the ones who had their knee on Floyd, it's kind of hard for them to be able to come to conclusion or know that
not killing
him,
but would they know that an assault is being taken? 8 minutes with a handcuffed suspect on the pavement, face smashed to the pavement, isn't that enough probable cause for an assault?
Again, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. See, we got to keep in mind is that murder has elements to it. Assault has elements to it. You being ignorant of that doesn't make it assault. Or you being okay. So the elements of murder is a malice intention. And so you have to prove that there was malice intentions in order to get a murder or assault. Now, if they were just following the leading of their senior officer, who being the most aggressor, and they were doing a job to subdue him before he went into the crisis mode where he couldn't breathe, the lawyer's going to have to prove at what point did they have knowledge that this has gone too far, and that's how they're going to. That's what they're going to have to prove to figure out what to charge.
What is considered subdued?
Subdue. Well, subdue it. I mean, my professional knowledge of it is when you got cuffs on, that person is pretty much subdued, unless that person is kicking and you can't secure. Because I've arrested people that I did handcuff and they used their feet as weapons, and I had to grab their legs and hold their legs down. And sometimes we do something called hog tie, is when we tie up their legs as well to keep them from kicking. And so there is another level of subduing even after handcuffing. But most of the time, in my experience, handcuffing ended
Right.
all of that. But there are some people that are pretty much determined to injure you or get away, and they will use everything to try to get away. They will use their teeth, and sometimes we have to carry. I carry some of those masks that we're wearing now
Right.
and put them
Right.
over their
Big
face
card.
because
Right.
a lot of people have. I've had encountered people that
Yeah.
had HIV, had all kind of TB, and they were trying to spit on me so
Right.
that I can contract it. So you had to cover their mouth up to keep them from spitting on you. They
Yeah.
try to kick you, and everything else. So there are certain levels of subduing that comes even
So
after handcuffing.
in this case,
And so I
last
don't.
question I'll ask you is: in this case, he was handcuffed early in this encounter. Do you see any professional reason why he was on the pavement handcuffed?
Well, it depends on where the struggle happened before he was handcuffed. If there was some kind of a struggle, because I don't know if George Floyd was actually
Because he was
struggling
in a
with them
car.
or
He was in the car and
resisting
then he was
arrest.
taken out of the car. So how he ends up on the pavement after being handcuffed and in a car at one point, that's the part I can't find the explanation for.
So are you telling me that he was handcuffed prior to being
Yes,
placed in the police car? Well, then, without knowing all the facts, I would say that shouldn't have happened. He should have never. Once you handcuff a person, that person becomes your prisoner, and they are in back of your squad car. There is no need to take them
exactly.
out
Exactly.
of that car. Absolutely no need to take them out, unless you had a vehicle without a shield. And like I said, that person was kicking you in your
Exactly.
back, and you probably would have to take them out to put ties
Right.
around their legs, so they couldn't do that. But if that car had a shield and there was a petition between you and them, there was no reason to take that person
Because
out of the
I
vehicle
think
that I
that's
could
where the
see.
case is going to come down to, because it's going to be like, okay, you followed your superior officer to the point that you had the suspect subdued. But what took place after that was clearly assault.
You're right. You're right. That could be the camel that breaks the straw back at the camel's back. That right there. I mean, that officer should known. Why are we taking him out of the car? He's subdued. He's in the car. He got handcuffs on him. He cannot harm us or anyone else anymore. He should never have been taken out of that vehicle until he got to the precinct and was taken to the back to be processed. So you're absolutely right. That
All
is an
right.
argument.
Well, my friend, this has been a great conversation. I hope it was informative to our listening audience, to my
Right.
police officer friends, who I told you I am hard on them, and
It's
to
okay.
everyone, to learn how we can make some changes in this. I thank you so much for giving us your knowledge and insight, and thanks for being on the Couch Attorney.
Hey man, thank you so much. Thanks for inviting me, and I hope that I offer some information that could help both sides.
Definitely.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to another great episode of The Couch Attorney. If you like what you heard, subscribe and like. And be sure to share it with your friends and family. We need to talk.